The second thing that was incredibly important is we survived.
Yeah.
So operating in the ocean is not for the faint-hearted.
Hey everybody, today I want to introduce you to an Australian company that is operating at the forefront of renewable energy. Paul Geason is the CEO of Wave Swell, a company whose patented uni-wave generator is creating clean, zero-emission electricity from the energy that comes from ocean waves. After completing successful trial off the coast of King Island in Tasmania, they are now engaged with the United States Department of Energy to roll out their business in the US. And that's where the conversation becomes very interesting. Yeah, you don't look like a startup guy. The way I sort of prefer to do it is talk to the investor.
Will you stand in to ask the question?
I'm going to stand right next to you. Then we'll
so we'll literally do it like this.
We'll stand right like that.
Oh, cool. I always wonder with these things, are you better to look into that little green dot or...
That's right. All right.
I think that looks great.
Okay. Right. That's okay.
Yeah,
that feels all right.
It's good. That feels good.
When you were a kid, what did you want to be?
When I was a kid,
Yep.
I wanted to be a sporting hero,
Okay.
Steve. Yeah, there was a great cyclist in northern Tasmania who used to come down and ride all the carnivals, Danny Clark.
Yep.
And I remember as a young kid, the amount of support and adulation for him was incredible. So I thought that'd be a really good profession. But then things got a little bit more serious. And, you know, interestingly enough, as a young child, I already sort of felt as though something in the law was for me,
Right.
on the right side of the law. And,
Very good.
you know, my parents are probably wondering what was in the water at home because I have three brothers and sisters, and three of us became lawyers.
Okay.
So I think perhaps there was destiny there. I just didn't know it at the time.
Were your parents lawyers?
Sorry?
Were your parents lawyers?
No, they weren't. They weren't. But they were fantastic in that I think we argued a lot around the dinner table. And
Very good.
in the end,
That's
you
always
know,
good practice, yeah. Arguing with family.
that's it. They taught us to form opinions, to argue for what we believed in, to have a sense of purpose. And I think, you know, the law certainly offers you the opportunity to do that.
And look where you found yourself, all of those things.
Yeah. So, you know, interestingly, I was reflecting that, you know, growing up in Tasmania was a terrific place to grow up. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of Australia. And as I think back now, I didn't know it at the time growing up there, how important it was that Tasmania benefited from 100% renewable energy from Hydro Tasmania.
Yeah.
Now, it was really probably just a quirk of history that they had that opportunity with their clean energy. But here I am now, finding myself passionate, determined to transform the way the world consumes or generates and consumes electricity. And, you know, fighting hard for renewables and a better way to power the planet.
Yeah. Why don't we start there? Why don't we start in Tasmania? So you've recently finished a pilot off the coast of King Island, which was a success. In the commercialization pathway of a company like this, why is that such an important milestone?
Yeah, so with any new technology, it's very, very important to prove the viability of the technology. And for us, King Island was that opportunity to demonstrate the technology. Two really important outcomes were achieved in that King Island demonstration. The first of those is we proved that our technology is extremely efficient. So our ability to convert the wave energy that comes into our wave energy converter is very high, absolutely world leading. The second thing that was incredibly important is we survived.
Yeah.
So operating in the ocean is not for the faint-hearted. And to have operated the unit for over 2 years in Bass Strait, very harsh ocean conditions, was a really important achievement. So for us, doing that in the wave energy sector means that two of the absolutely critical criteria for success in this sector are you've got to be able to produce energy and you need to be able to survive in the ocean. If you can do that, you've got a commercially sustainable technology that can contribute to the broader transformation to renewables.
All right. So we've talked about King Island, the importance of the pilot. Let's go back a step. I think it's accepted that wave energy has the potential to provide a significant amount of the world's electricity if it can be effectively commercialized. Something like 20% of all electricity could come from ocean energy. But the commercialization pathway has some challenges, doesn't it? One in particular is the one about costs. How does Wave Swell overcome that challenge?
Yeah, so cost is a factor that we think a lot about, Steve, and the way we overcome it is essentially through deploying more units. Just as was the case with solar technologies and wind technology in the early stages of their development 20 and 30 years ago, they faced the challenge of also reducing their costs so that they could compete effectively then with fossil fuels. So for us, it's about getting the technology in the water. As you do that, you learn. When you learn, you're able to reduce your unit costs. In addition to that, scale is important. So economies of scale are also a factor. As you deploy more, you've got higher volumes and you're able to realize capex savings and cost savings. But also, as we deploy more units, we learn how to be more efficient and improve the performance of the technology. So it's not just about lowering costs, it's actually getting more energy from the units themselves. A 10% improvement in the performance of the unit can result in a 10% reduction in the actual levelized cost of, I shouldn't say levelized cost, that's silly, just cost of energy. So I'll just say cost of energy.
Do you want to just repeat that last sentence?
Yeah, what I know. So, for example, a 10% increase in the performance of the technology can result in a 10% reduction in the cost of energy.
Yeah, and I think, the movement towards wave in particular as a form of renewable energy across governments worldwide has been pretty impressive. The EU is moving on this. They're doing a lot of work to incentivize more. Let's talk about the US. I mean, the one question that's going to be on everyone's mind is, Trump administration, what does Don think about this? Do you want to talk us through that? Why is that not only not a challenge for you, but actually has some upside for Wave Swell right now with the Trump administration?
Yeah, well, look, let me say first up, Steve, I agree with you. Europe is probably the beating heart and soul of the ocean energy sector around the planet. They really have come early to investing in the research and development needed to form the foundation of a very successful marine renewable energy sector. The US, though, is moving quickly as well. We built a relationship with the Department of Energy in the King Island demonstration. They took a real interest in our technology because it was efficient and we were operating in ocean conditions at scale for a long period of time. The US is a destination market for us. We're starting to see very important government policy statements, both at a federal and state level, supporting the introduction of ocean energy technologies into the mix of renewables in the United States. We're proposing a project to the US Department of Energy to integrate our wave energy converter with a jetty at a place called Port Orford in Oregon. Fantastic location. We've already been able to create a really strong level of community support with the Port Commission of Port Orford, with the Mayor, and the community broadly in terms of the opportunity for them to see a transformation of their energy types in a remote coastal community. This is really important for us in the US because to demonstrate our technology in US waters will then be catalyst to even greater Department of Energy interest and private interest investing in projects. With the Trump administration, a whole range of questions are being asked in terms of energy policy. We've heard from Trump himself, drill, baby, drill. We don't drill, but we certainly can be a very important part of the need for much more electricity in the system in the US. A couple of things about Trump. It's important to note that in his 2016 administration, the program and budget that was dedicated to the Water, Power and Technology Office of the Department of Energy actually grew under his administration. We hope that the same thing happens in this administration. The second thing that's also important about Trump is we've heard many public statements about his level of dissatisfaction with offshore wind and with solar. He doesn't like them because they don't look good. He doesn't like them because the benefits flow to other countries outside of the US. With a marine renewable energy sector in the US, there is the potential for the US to take the lead globally in an emerging sector, but doing so by using local resource, local components, harvesting a local resource. And the way in which we've proposed our project at Port Orford in Oregon is just that. We are Americanizing our technology so that We leverage local labour and resources, local components input into the deployment of our wave energy converter and power takeoff. And all of that brings a massive boost to the economy of Port Orford, but then more broadly as a foundation in the fabric of a marine renewable energy sector in the US. So they've always been interested to understand our technology. They also really buy into the coastal structure integration platform, meaning we can integrate our wave energy converter with structures like breakwalls and seawalls. And that's something that they see as being very important in terms of getting started. So the funding is starting to flow in the US in terms of projects that will accelerate the commercialization of technology in the US. This is an opportunity for the US to develop a sector that's world leading, uses all US components, all US labor, and harvests a magnificent local ocean energy resource. So for those reasons, we're really confident that as we work through the processes that the Trump administration have introduced, that we should come out on the other side, not only with opportunity, but probably indeed even stronger and more enhanced opportunity.
Well, that's promising. If we assume for a second that the Trump administration will be open to wave energy as a source of this renewable power source, let's talk about the technology itself. There's been lots of different types of vessel. Can you just talk us through what the difference is between Wave Swell and some of the other wave technologies that are in the market?
Sure. We're really quite different to other technologies that are in the market. Really three key points of difference. The first of those is that in the demonstration of the technology at King Island, we were able to achieve world-leading energy conversion efficiency. That's been validated in work that we've done with the Australian Maritime College and also assessed by the US Department of Energy through their Pacific Northwest National Lab. So having very high energy conversion efficiency is so important in terms of the commercial sustainability of our technology. A second point, and probably one of the most important points, is that our technology is incredibly simple. So unlike so many other ocean energy technologies that have mechanical moving parts and high tech in or below the waterline, we have none of that. We have no moving parts in the water, simply a concrete and steel structure. Now, the importance of that is that we then have safe and ease of access to the moving parts. We are more reliable because we're not suffering the effects of the ocean condition. We have lower cost in terms of the operation and maintenance of the technology. And importantly also, we're not introducing anything artificial into the ocean environment. So we have a minimal impact on the marine environment. I think also the versatility of our technology is important to understand. So it can be deployed in many different platforms. We deployed it in a particular way at King Island in a standalone structure sitting on the seabed. But for example, the project we're proposing in the US right now would actually see us integrate the wave energy converter with a coastal structure, with a jetty. Now, the importance of that is that we're now able to build from land and operate from land. That lowers the cost, again, improves ease and safety of access. And it also means that we have less visual impact on the environment and for the community surrounding the area because we're integrated into an existing structure, which is incredibly important in terms of getting community support and authorization for our projects. So those are some very, very important distinctions between us and so many of the other ocean energy technologies.
So Paul, and from a revenue perspective, Paul, talk us through how Wave Swell sees itself and what its revenue streams are now and what they're likely to be.
So we see ourselves as a technology company. That's very important to note. So we will partner with other developers, utilities on projects where that partner takes the prime responsibility in terms of the development of the project and the financing and the raising of the capital for projects. So in that way, our business model is very capital light. And that's very important in an infrastructure technology like ours. Our business model is we will work with those partners, we will receive revenues for professional services in terms of the support that we can provide from design through to construction, deployment, operation, and ultimately decommissioning of these technologies. We also will deliver product, so in terms of the integration and assembly of the key components of the power takeoff in our technology. We will actually assemble, deliver that, and take margin on that product. Licensing revenues from making the technology available to projects, and then also an ongoing asset services management relationship with operators, where we take an annuity fee for supporting the technology in its operation. So that's fundamental to our business model. It's important to understand that, it's capital light, and then we've got strong and multiple revenue streams with high margin returns.
Yeah, I think that's a really important differentiator for companies like this. I think when people hear wave energy, they think, it's scores of millions of dollars to get a vessel off the ground, and that may well be for the pilot, but moving forward, that becomes more of an issue for the project operator and less of an issue for Wave Swell, which I think is an important thing for people to understand. You're now at a stage where you have technical validation off the back of the King Island, and years and years of work by Tom and others. You now have consumer validation, I would say, with the US Department of Energy now engaged in discussions around commercialization. At this point in the business's journey, it is now easier to see a pathway towards an exit. And I know that the board and yourself are already thinking about what a liquidity event may look like for this business after this raise, after engagement with the Department of Energy in the US. Can you talk us through that? Accepting, of course, that all of these things are forecasts and no one ever quite knows where things are going to go. But right now, when you look at the next couple of years, what does a liquidity pathway look like for you?
Sure. So to step back one moment, Steve, I think what's very important to understand about Wave Swell and how we're approaching the market opportunity is we acknowledge we're a small team of 5 people, and to accelerate to the scale that's required to see our technology succeed is going to require the engagement of very critical strategic partners in execution, but also partners then that can become investors in Wave Swell and indeed ultimately owners of Wave Swell. So what we are very focused on right now is identifying those partners that have the vision, the capacity and the resource to work with us to accelerate the scaling up of the technology globally, but also invest in Wave Swell. And what that will result in is a liquidity opportunity for shareholders in the form of a trade sale. And our focus and effort right now in that context is very much we need to prepare the company in the next 2 years for a liquidity event of that nature.
Yeah, that's exciting, Paul. It's really exciting. So let's talk about this raise in particular. A few major milestones have been hit. There's a very clear pathway for growth in the next 12 months. How much are you raising, and what will these funds be used for, and where do you see the business at the end of the use of those funds?
So we're looking to raise 4 million Aussie dollars in this raise. It's an important raise for us because those funds will be used to support the internationalization of our business, to expand internationally. The US is a priority and destination market, but we're also monitoring opportunity in Europe extremely closely as well. The funds will be used to put resources on the ground. So we acknowledge that when moving into an international market, it is important to have local networked resources, and we need business development, project development, engineering resource that will be accountable for the development of a pipeline to greenlight our technology in the United States. The second really important use of these funds will be giving us the capacity to engage with partners in a way that sees them support the acceleration of the scaling up of our technology, but also ultimately potentially investing in Wave Swell, indeed potentially owning Wave Swell in the context of a liquidity opportunity for shareholders, and in order to see the company and the technology exposed to a balance sheet and a capacity and a vision to take our technology and accelerate it commercially across the planet.
I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but it is possible, isn't it, that this is the last opportunity external investors will have to invest in Wave Swell before it reaches a moment where it's not reliant on external funding that isn't institutional and isn't then on a pathway to liquidity. I mean, anything could happen, of course, and the company might come back for additional capital another time. But it feels like if your plan for the next 12 months off the back of this capital raising plays out the way that you expect, then this might be the last opportunity for people to invest in
Yeah, I
Wave
think
Swell.
that's a very good point, Steve. It is, and we consider this round an interim round because, as I have said, it is very much now about us having the capacity to really set those foundations for launching the company into these international markets where the scale of investment capital required, not only for projects, but also in terms of then the growth of the business, will be very different. And it will be then a matter for more institutional fund-like investment in the business. So it couldn't be a better time to be involved in the global transition to renewable energy, and let's have a crack with an emerging technology in the ocean energy sector.
Well, Paul, I love the work that you are doing and the team at Wave Swell. We've been fans for a long time. Obviously, we were part of the first raise, and we're very proud of that. Because if we can see global wave energy turned into renewable electricity, I think that is in everybody's best interest. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Thanks,
your
Steve.
time. If you want to find out more about Wave Swell, jump onto the VentureCrowd website and follow the links from there.